in conversation between Edwin and Siew Hua, or Chris. Yeah, so these are two of, our Southeast Asian Golden Leopard winners. I'm sure that we can also, two out of three, so we've got the majority in here this morning. Yes, thank you very much for coming, and I hope we can have a good, interesting, inspiring, given conversation with the both of them. Today, please ask them questions. You can scan the QR code on the screen, and your questions will pop up here, and I will read it out to them and to the audience. Probably these two people don't need so much introduction, but I will read out a tiny little bit about each of them. Edwin is one of Indonesian director that started his career after the New Order regime, so post-New Order. His feature film Blind Pig Who Wants to Fly in 2008 won the FIPRESCI Prize at Rotterdam Film Festival and the NETPAC Award Special Mention at our very dear SGIFF. And his follow-up, Postcards from the Zoo in 2012, competed for the Golden Bear at the Berlinale, after making Posesif in 2017 and Aruna Her Palate in 2018 for the domestic market. Edwin returns with Vengeance is Mine, All Others Pay Cash for the opening film. I hope you all have seen the film. Okay, right. And Siew Hua, or Chris, is the previous Southeast Asian winner of Locarno's Golden Leopard with his film A Lamb Imagined in 2018. It's such a beautiful film. So today I will invite them in conversation with each other and with you, obviously also with me. I propose that we explore a little bit also about, what they think about filmmaking in general. What does this award mean for them? And, feel free to ask your own questions through this QR code. All right, so I have my small list of questions. And I actually would like to start from the very beginning. And I would like to ask each of you, was there ever a film that made you think, I want to be a filmmaker? So let's start with you, Edwin. Was there ever a film that made you think, oh, I want to be a filmmaker?
No. Yeah. So, strange, eh? No, I don't know. I don't have. I even thought that film is not me. It just happened. So when I was when I found out that there's people going to film school, what do they learn? So it's what I'm more curious. Of course, I love watching films, but I don't really know that that's a profession, making film.
I don't think it is.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. What do you think?
Is it a profession, even?
No. Yeah, we cannot kid ourselves. It's not a real profession. It's just something we do.
Yeah.
I don't know also if there is a single film. I think it would be very strange to say that there is a single film. I feel like maybe that there are films that will continue to make you feel like, oh wow, okay, there's something here. Maybe I want to get involved, and then a few years later you watch something else and it's like, oh wow, okay. Yeah, so I think it's really a number of films, and then maybe next time you watch back the film that inspired you and you're like, not so great. Like yeah, but it's also very hard to say like a single film. I think. But just to give some name to your question, just so that we don't both like totally evade it. I think I saw this film, but it was really after I went to film school first, and that's maybe Amsterdam's Tropical Melody that I think was shown in SGIFF. And I think that film, yeah, it's hard to say that film. I watched it and I want to be a filmmaker because I was already in film school. But then after that, I think I saw it in SGIFF, actually, I think SIFF, and it was previously called. Yeah, it was like, oh wow, okay, film like this also can, huh? Like, strange, huh? But yeah, it was very, how should I put it? It was just very different, right? And then at the same time, the international festivals were also enjoying it, and you're thinking, okay, maybe something interesting here that we can do, right? That could, I think Rotterdam Melody was something like a turning point for maybe a lot of people here in Southeast Asia.
I think the reaction, when you see a good film or a film that moves something in you, for the majority of human beings probably is not a response that, oh, wow, I want to make a film too. So, that's why I thought there must be something, whether a film or not, that kind of move you to do it. I wonder what kind of stories actually both of you, like grew up with. You want to start? Oh no, you just talk. So
Okay.
Edwin.
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of Hollywood films. I mean, there's not enough options. I grew up in Surabaya, it's not in Jakarta, so the exposure not only, let alone cinema, there's no art in that city. It's a very industrial city. There's no gallery, there's no art education in the school. So my exposure to art is very limited into drawing, technical drawing stuff, or a popular comic book. They don't call comic art, right? So it's not an art either. So Hollywood films, that's the only access that I got in cinema. But then also there's a lot of video rental shop, and I happen to spend a lot of time whenever I remember when I went to my grandparents' house. It's very near with a small shop that also rent video. So I hang out there and just watching some people trying to. The interesting part when you rent that video, if you don't really familiar with the title, you can try it. So you can I see the first 2 minutes of the film? So I just try.
Preview.
Yeah, this is the pre-trailer time.
No trailer, no
Yeah,
trailer.
okay.
Yeah. And then there's many, not only Hollywood films, Hong Kong films, mostly in actions, horror. So very cheap and trashy entertainment films. So that's what I grew up with until I went to this film school in Jakarta, and then of course there's a lot of exposure of coming from Europe, documentaries. I've never seen any documentaries. Like for example, I was like quite surprised with Power Hatsi. Wow, it's like maybe it's the same thing when we saw Tropical Body. But still, I was grew up with a very popular cinema.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. Popular cinema. I mean, I grew up on Disney, you know. Yeah.
Disney, okay, yeah.
Disney and Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think. Yes.
Right.
Talking about action films, yes. No, actually, and also the same experience with this like VCD, VHS shops, and then later on became LD. Like, so my parents, not to their fault, but they were both working parents, so they were very busy. And then my dad one day came to tell me like, here's a booklet of like 100 vouchers. And then there's like the DVD shop. As and when you want, you can self-entertain and go borrow things. Yeah. And I think that was a lot of my film education, was this booklet that I can just go and borrow VCD and LD. And also at that point of time, no trailer, not yet internet. So I was looking at the booklet and there was a lot of these, they used a poster as an image to the film, and it was purely picking the book by its cover, you know, it's like, what was this Gremlin thing? Gremlin 2! Oh, okay, everything. Yeah, so, I think we're just going. But I same, like popular films, and through this DVD rental experience.
Yeah, but what is interesting for me is also to hear, I mean, my experience is more or less the same. And what I noticed is that for us, American films, like American popular films, came first, right? Like our first exposures, whereas probably for people like in a different generation to us, have like more exposure to, let's say, Hong Kong kung fu flick or Bruce Lee, yeah. So I guess that we somehow are a generation that is a little bit alienated from Asian cinema in a sense. So for me, it's quite interesting that both of you actually are making Asian films. Hey, we start to have questions, so I'm just gonna, pick questions and then bring back, some of my own questions. So let me start from the first question that came in. It's from Dan. Can you wave, Dan? Hi. All right. Dear Edwin, loved your new film. To me, it's a coming together of your early, elusive political filmmaking. In brackets, some of my fave films. Yay. And your two recent commercial domestic films, do you agree that it's a coming together to your early, elusive political film?
This film, the latest film, Vengeance.
Yeah, I think if I see my films, all of them has at least in similarity, and they try to evolve. And I guess I think most of the filmmakers or artists, basically they do have something in common in their practice, and it's always never-ending journey or research when you and every work that you do is always trying to resolve or rethink that questions that you have in very basic or even subconsciously always in your head, your mind. I think so. No matter it's more commercial, more local, you say, more art house, whatever they call it. It's, for me, it's still personal. It's still something that I'm trying to communicate with others since my first short film, probably. Yeah.
Thank you, Edwin. I do also find it interesting, this distinction here between what is domestic and what is not domestic. But before we go deeper into that, let me read a question for you, Chris. How did your philosophy studies inspire or help you as filmmakers? Wow, this comes as a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Please. So after the stories, now philosophy.
Yes. Well, maybe yes. Just a bit of context was that after film school, I went to study philosophy. And I think once you open up the book, it kind of seeps into everything that you do. So my films, I think, tend to become a bit of the canvas to which it's a lot of what I've been studying on that went into the film. It's hard to say again like one thing, but maybe I was very concerned about issues on perspectives when I was doing my philosophy, and perspectives and identities. And I think these things are very, like, film is a very wonderful place to explore, particularly these issues that I was very interested in. Because when we discuss identity in philosophy, we discuss attributes and substances, But then film has a way to create a much more embodied experience of theoretical philosophy, no? So I think when that happened for me, that sort of clicked for me, to really explore, I guess, a lot of my philosophical questions through a much more embodied way, because it's kind of the flesh of a person walking around. So I think that came together very well for me. To say that, okay, let's take it out of the books and let's see what we can present with the power of the image. You have the ability to relate, and I think that's a very strong power of cinema that we don't find in text, philosophy per se. Particularly like theoretical texts, right? And also for me, issues of perspectives and consciousness. So maybe why also a number of my works have multiple subjectivities that relate to each other in a certain way. So yeah, I think a lot of these thoughts, I guess I always start my films with certain kind of conceptual standpoints. Like this. So I guess that's how, I'm not sure if it answers the questions, but that's how it happens for me.
I think it pretty much did. So I think it brings up the fact or your way of working in which, certain thinking or traditional thinking and perhaps even theories as a way to look at the world in more like a scientific way that influences how you practice your art, right? So let me just go to the next question, which is also addressed to you. How did you get your feature funded? Wow, okay, big question, but good one. Was it difficult, and do you have advice for other filmmakers that want to create a feature? I propose that you answer this question, and then maybe Edwin can also...
No, he should.
Yeah, share a little bit of what happens to
I'm interested in Edwin's answer, so he should share also. I guess everyone knows that making films take a lot of money, a lot of resources. Actually, I don't know about you, Edwin, but I think I spend 70 or 80% of my time trying to find money, right? As a director, being on set and doing what you love on set is really like 5 to 20% of your time. And then a lot of the other time, of course, you're developing a script, but you're also basically, facilitating to try to get the funding together, no? Very specifically, my film was as a co-production, right? So there's Singapore, which is the money we got from IMDA. There was the New Talent Feature Grant. I think it's still going on, and this is particularly for filmmakers who are first and second feature films. So Land Imagine was my second feature film, and so it's more like a talent development grant. So of course, I think that's something that we have to try. And then after that, we got money from the French, and also the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
That's through our co-production, agreements, right? But maybe a few steps backwards for maybe, I'm not sure who is it that was asking this question, but maybe that's the situation.
It's an anonymous question.
Anonymous question, yeah. Because I think then the very first step is to get to find a producer who is able to understand how this works, right? I mean, just saying, please go do your own co-production itself is,
Yes.
It's an impossible task if you don't understand what's going on here. So I think as a newer filmmaker, it's really important to have a producer who's experienced, who knows how to make negotiations. I mean, we filmmakers, we cannot do this stuff. Like, we're very bad at it. Yeah. Someone needs to really help us to push some negotiations, because we are like writing ideas and philosophy and stuff like. Yeah. So I guess that's how the money was put together eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also like to pose the same question with Edwin, because I think it's also interesting that you and one of your producers, Mesa, kind of grew together. Like, you worked together since your short films.
2006.
Yeah. So can you tell the audience a little bit also how, you conjure funds for your work?
Yeah, financing is always interesting part of the process, I guess. Yeah, it's I would say the form of financing also more or less affecting the work that you are going to produce. No matter you want to, you have this idea, but then if it doesn't really fit with the financing system, then it doesn't work. So you need to really balance what you have in your mind, the ideas and all those philosophy things, needs to communicate with the real thing, the reality. Especially, I guess in Indonesia, I would say there's no ideal situation for financing film. So it's always free, it's always independent. You can choose go to the 100% business, like investors, equity style. There's no distributor, so everything is unsystematic. So in a way, it's quite bad in terms of sustainability, but on the other hand, it's quite liberating in terms of it's up to you how you want to construct the film, and how you want to approach the audience, how you find your audience. It's definitely challenging, but it's not boring, I guess. I mean, maybe that's also why I choose different kind of market, I would say, like the domestic part, like the two films that I did before this film was only focused on Indonesian market. No, it's totally different financing system. It's 100% investment. There's no funding from government at all. So it's more, it's different with this one, co-production with Singapore, with Germany. But yeah, then it creates a very different kind of film in terms of form. That's what I enjoy. Also learning from the experience working, and as Lisa said, I work with Maisel Malaysia, my producer partner since 2006, since our shop. So we grew together. We are exploring, a lot of possibilities with cinema, and I think financing part is not always boring for me, although I'm not really good with numbers, maybe like you, but it's important to feel new, it's not repeating routines. It's important not only in creative ideal, writing of style, but also in this very practical things like financing.
Yeah, I think
Actually,
it's
this form
very.
of financing stuff, you reminded me. Then, like in the documentary, I mean, you're exactly right. Like I made this documentary, it was crowdfunded, but it's because you could, the project itself warrants for it. Right? I mean, you've seen, the documentary. It has to do with like music, some bands, and so there are people who really want. There are a lot of fans, right, from the bands who want to support the project, and so with the documentary project, we did also the other route to do crowdfunding, which was also quite maybe a bit more popular at that point of time in the early 2000s, right? So I mean totally. I think you're right to say that we find different ways of different projects. Maybe Singapore, in a strange way, our domestic market is very small, and so it's very hard to get back money through, let's say, totally private investment. So I think our dependency on the cultural funding becomes a bit heavier when we're trying to finance the film. But I mean, there are all sorts of ways to finance your films, and it's an interesting, depending on what the project is.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting how both of you experience it, and I could see that probably looking for funds in whichever way you decide, investment, crowdfunding, co-production, then is sort of the first step of communication. Like, the communication part in filmmaking is not just when it's finished and you communicate with an audience, but this is like way back when you communicated in terms of ideas and get allies to make it happen, right? So I guess if I could just briefly summarize both of your answers, that depending on what kind of film that is in your head or in your heart, then it works for a different way or a particular way of fundraising. And one of the important components is obviously to get your first ally, which is your producer, right? Good. Thank you very much for the answer. On to the next questions. To Mas Edwin. What's the film's reception in Indonesia? In showing your film abroad, do you notice any context that international audience misses out in your film that Indonesians notice? This is a question from Olivia. Can you wait for us, Olivia? Hi.
We're just going to release the film in Indonesia next week, so we don't really know what's going to be the reaction from the public audience. But we are very excited. We tried to already screen in several communities, universities, and different cities in Indonesia. Just this week, so we got quite nice response, with also same in the international responses in terms of how we have fun with the action and the form of this genre. It's playful, I guess. It's the same reaction. But yeah, there are definitely something that they can dig more. I mean, it's an Indonesian film. Even how they respond to the treatment of the language, it's also different. Obviously, the international, they don't really get the language style because we are using not a real, you are Indonesian, I guess you should understand that. So it's maybe can explain a little bit to all of us here that the language that is used in the film is not everyday style of language.
Yeah, it's not like colloquial speech
No,
style.
nobody talk like that anymore. But it's very close to us because that kind of style of talking all in popular cinema in the 80s and 90s. I'm sure maybe younger generation that doesn't really exposed to that era maybe feel strange with this kind of style. But I'm quite also I believe that they can also get it from song or writings or poetry. So it's still distance, but also at the same time it feels close. I think that's something that they can respond differently. And of course, there's a lot of social political background that might be missed by international audience in terms of our historical Indonesian historical political background. Because I think this film is basically it's a love story between Ajo and Ethan, but there are a lot of the other characters are representing the period, the political social context is very strong actually, although it's in very more subtle way. Yeah.
Yeah, just to, if I may, just to add my little bit of observation, because I've seen the film with an audience in Europe and at the opening of SGIFF, I do feel that some jokes relate much more to the audience in Asia, like simple things like, this animation in the beginning that says heaven is under mother's toe, for example. Like in Europe, it's like, whereas I feel that the audience here kind of react, even physically react, like chuckles and stuff. So definitely there are very fine cultural contexts that didn't really get across, like the wider the cultural context is casted, I guess. So thank you, Olivia. Shall I go on with still Olivia's question, just to wrap it up? And it's a question for both of you. The question is, can you describe, probably briefly, because probably you can go on like 7 days and 7 nights about this, your working relationship with your producer? What works well between you and your producer? Do you want to start first? Or nothing works well?
No. Everything works very well, which is very lucky. Actually, like Edwin, I know my producer Fran Borgia really early on already, like even during film school, and he was an exchange student in my film school, so we already met at that point of time, and so we have been helping each other out through our career, if you can call it this. Yeah. So yeah, we have a very tight, strong kind of starting point, and we are friends first. Like I think that's very important. Yeah. Later on, I met Ben, also my other producer, who then started out working with me on my documentary. Yeah. also at a quite, I guess, when we were a lot younger also. Yeah. So I think it was, we had time to build that relationship. It's kind of important because it requires kind of a lot of trust, between the producer and the director. And if you can't have an honest friendship with your producer, I think it's quite difficult. Yeah. If you're always needing to second guess your producer, it becomes very difficult. Like, yeah, is he or she trying to do something that's good for the film and me? Like, yeah. If you have to even think about all these things, then you're no longer thinking about the film like together as a unit. And because making a film takes a long time, sometimes 4, 5, 6, 8 years. So yeah, you kind of have to stick through it, Yeah. And if things go bad, it can go bad for a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, with my producer, very luckily, yeah, we have had an amazing relationship, both my producers, yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have fights, of course, but I think so long as we both know that we're fighting for the right reasons, yeah, and to then take care of each other, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you. What about you, Edwin? How do you describe your relationship with your producer?
Yeah, I say more or less same. We grew up together. I think both of us really learn a lot by making films. So that's the thing that we are believe in. So we want to as a human we need to always learn and it's not so easy to learn yourself. Sometimes you need a partner to be motivated to find something new, meeting new people, learning something new, and challenging your own values. So that's what I see from my relationship with my producer. I worked with her since 2006, and then there's in 2015 there's another producer joining us. New perspective, challenging our relationship again, and then we grew up together with 3 people now. It's really lucky. I would say that.
Like it will be very boring for this journey if you are doing it yourself, right? I mean, to put it this way, a lot of your other crew member or collaborators, they come and they infuse it with energy and creativity, but the producer and you guys
stay, right?
Yeah, the whole way. And if it will be a very lonely journey if you're doing this alone. So yeah, that partnership that can constantly challenge each other. Mm-hmm. I think it's very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think both of you are super lucky to have a very trustful relationship with your producer, because of course, I mean, who hasn't heard of the term director's cut, which in itself says that sometimes directors have a different mind than the producer. Of course, it is super important that this working relationship is not only safe, but also growing, right? So hopefully, if you are making your art film, your own films, you can also find the same intensity and positivity in the relationship with your producer. Let me go on to the next question. The question is from Ryan. Where are you, Ryan? Hi. Dear Edwin and Chris, I haven't seen Vengeance, but I did see Posesif, and I'm thinking about how that might be regarded as a spin on a romance film, and how Land Imagined is for noir crime. The question continues, what are both of your thoughts on the idea of genre? Do you find it useful or necessary to think about? How do you approach these categories? So maybe you want to start first, Chris, or Edwin want to start first? Okay, Edwin starts first.
Genre, good. Genre, fun. Genre, yes. Of course, it's a language that it's like a language for me. So it brings the audience an easier access, to go into the cinema, to film. I think it's an option that you can use or not. I remember when I was doing this script lab at the Sundance screenwriter lab. It's totally different when I went with the same project I did Torino Film Lab and Sundance. Torino, of course, they come from European perspective, approach, which is very doesn't really believe in one formula. On the other hand, Sundance is very Hollywood. They have their own respect on the form itself, the genres, cinema and genres. It's always it's classical. So it's interesting when I talk with them, and they of course they know that this is not going to be a genre movie, but they always challenge everything in that script with the genre as a tool to evaluate, which is makes sense for me that the audience mostly growing up with genre, to understand, to get into the cinema world. So at least I have to really also think about how the expectation will come from the audience. Because if you are, it's already almost like automatic when you show something, it needs to be explained at the end of the, you cannot leave it alone. It needs to be paid off. That's most of the genre are talking about that, the logic.
So it's kind of a useful vehicle for you.
Exactly, but it doesn't really need to be realized. I mean, no, it doesn't have to be answered like that way. But at least you know that the audience expecting that. It's up to us to give it or not. But I don't want to not be responsible by not thinking that possibilities, because as myself as an audience, I can understand that I'm used to with those genres, norms, conventions.
And what about you? About more genre?
I guess my film is very deliberate with the genre in the filmmaking. I think also because I'm a genre fan. I mean, like I said, I grew up watching these Hollywood films and stuff like this, and I think
Between Gremlin and Land,
there's some growth in between. Yes. No, but actually for me, I particularly am interested in genre in a very maybe in a slightly historical sense, because let's say with film noir, which is what quite a bit of my film is, actually also to say that genre is a very big part of the history of cinema. I mean, if we are seeing it from that kind of golden age Hollywood, not to say that there isn't anything else, of course, but in that very mainstream studio sense, there is that big part of our filmmaking consciousness that has to do with genres, the structures of genres, the language of genres, yeah. And in some strange way, my engagement with genre in my film is to try to engage a bit of that history, yeah. But to also be very aware that a lot of these genres, like film noir, came out of a very specific time and history. I mean, of like post-war America, of like, and also when it got took on with the French, and a lot of these things they are contextually specific. Whether it's the femme fatale or is it like all these things, they are very contextually specific, and I think it's more important for us how to not be too easy with the genre, right? I mean, yes, we appropriate these genres because of certain reasons also. As you say, there's certain access, certain familiarity with the audience. Whether are you baiting them in with the genre and then sort of subverting it, or are you taking it to tell your story in a certain way, right? I think it's not, how not to just take on the genre and blindly, but to say like how are we taking our genre and then like appropriating something that is already happening, historical in many sense, but then say there is also this particular specific context that we are engaging in. So I think genre is a very good way for me to engage my audience. That is not very hard, like watch this, but to say, to invite you in through a genre, but also to say, here, there's something else.
Yeah, I find your answers both very useful in also understanding how filmmakers see genre as language and vehicle, but it is part of this. Some people probably call it literacy, or some people call it culture. That binds you with a certain audience. That it's just a set of rule of the game, let's say, that you agree with your audience, and then within that rule of game you kind of improvise together, right? Thank you. So it was very interesting, and thank you for the question. It was fantastic. I want to address a very interesting question also. It's very simple. How was Locarno for both of you? Like, what does this mean, this Golden Leopard? So let's start from Edwin first, like the recent one, and then we kind of flash.
You're freshly in.
The award,
what does it mean to you? And also, for both of you, perhaps you could also think of it as the perspective of where you're from, right? Winning an award in Locarno in Europe.
Yes, of course it's a happy thing. Coming from a festival that really believe in cinema, really celebrating the cinema and championing cinema that I love, I've seen before, and be part in the festival. So it's a big thing. It's a big appreciation. It's a big response. And then you got the award, and then especially in this, I think it's also in this particular time, after 2 years of nothingness in cinema, and then you got this experience. Not only me, I guess it's the whole cast and crew. I think it's beyond I don't know, it's beyond words. It's exactly what we need, to survive, to motivate us to be more responsible, I guess, because we are lucky to be able to still making films and meeting the audience, and then also for the audience, because I will say we are all making film, yeah, for to get the communication with the audience, and then not only us that need to be motivated, audience needs also to be to be celebrated too with this award. So this is really nice. For
What
the
I
whole
remember,
cinema ecosystem, I guess.
yeah, what I remember, and I find it interesting that in your acceptance speech, you say that this award was for Southeast Asian cinema. Like, what is this Southeast Asian cinema? That's, by the way, a question by Anonymous.
By the way, he doesn't answer that.
Okay, yeah, but okay, please keep that
about
question.
Okay.
So, tell us about what Golden Leopard is.
So, I mean, some of you would know, some might not, but maybe I think like different film festivals have like different kind of, how should I put it, like a different kind of,
It's a different kind of awards?
No, but you know, there's the Cannes Film Festival, there's like,
Yes.
and it has a different kind of flavor, like different kind of festivals has its own kind of flavor.
And I think it's also standpoint, right?
Yes. And I think with the Locarno Festival, I think as Edwin has put it, I myself am very, I admire this festival a lot, its selection, its programming, all these things with the Locarno Festival is very special because I think they are one of the very few festivals that is pushing the boundaries of cinema, like really committed to pushing the boundaries of cinema, depending on how, in terms of the programming. So I think to receive an award from a festival like this, it's really, really rewarding for me. And I'm hearing that it is for you too, in that sense, right? So yeah, on top of winning a big award like the Locarno Festival, coming from the Locarno Festival, it was very special for myself. Yeah. So that's happy and really great. Maybe to talk a little bit about, because I won the award 2018, so that's already a few years. Sort of the effects of it I can talk a little bit about, and that really helped with the film's distribution, right?
Right.
So on top of all this prestige and like yay stuff, it really helped the film to travel. But there's something very important that I have to say. It really helped me save a lot of trouble and money to bring the film elsewhere. Right? Because when you have a recognition from a festival like this, it's more often than not you have people inviting your film to other festivals, to other places to screen, comparing this to maybe like an earlier film that I made that didn't get this kind of recognition. It was just a lot harder to get the film be shown elsewhere. Sometimes you will have to pay the festival to please show my film, maybe, But after having won the Locarno, the interest for the film is really high, and this was so much easier for us to have the film shown, get invited, getting paid for screening the film.
Yeah.
Everything changes a little bit when you win an award like this. So yes, on top of it being very prestigious, yes, it makes your life so much easier. Yeah, I can also say that, the film is on Netflix, and a film like ours is not so common to find on Netflix because it is not a conventional type of cinema.
Absolutely true, yeah.
So it has everything to do with winning the Locarno. Like everything.
Yeah.
That now it is on Netflix and it is being able to be watched by people everywhere. If they dig deep enough into the algorithm. Yeah. But yeah, it lubricates everything. Like it really makes things so much easier after that for the life of the film that we can even talk about it today, right? I mean, that itself something to be celebrated. So yes.
Yeah, that I think both of you pointed out really important aspects of what an award means. It's not just accolades, and also not just money. There are two things that I find very interesting. What you talked about is that this enables a certain spotlight that makes the film more accessible. Like you basically get in touch with more people, different regions, and travel, and probably also it paves a better way for like your next works. But beyond that, I think it also paves a certain way to make a region or an identity festival. And I feel that with both your wins, at least we start to realize that Southeast Asia is on the map, like not just as a region where the United States built their military base in, but as an idea from real people, real artists, and real life. So thank you. I will go on to the next question. There are a lot of anonymous questions today. Can you wave, anonymous? Sorry. Yes, to both filmmakers. Can you comment on the politics or choice of the spoken language in your respective films? Coming from Southeast Asia, how is it viewed abroad and locally with many diverse identities? I mean, my understanding of this question is it's all about language in terms of not only the style, but also the diversity of the language in our region, right? So let me start with you, Chris.
Well, in Singapore's case, it's we have this situation of having Chinese, Malay, Indian, and also a whole other plethora of languages that I'm only starting to also explore in my short films these days. From Southeast Asia actually. So this is very interesting. But at the same time, as a cinema, how do you include everything? It's always that difficult choice to make, right? I think with my film A Land Imagine already. Because of the very specific content with the migrant workers from Bangladesh mostly, and then also from Chinese mainland, and then Singapore. So there is already a very strange, like even the Chinese from the Chinese migrant worker and the Singaporean is very different. And so already I'm needing to deal with a certain mixing of that language and at the same time translating to each other in English. So Southeast Asia has a very interesting situation like this, I think. How it is. Someone also pointed out to me that actually the common language in Southeast Asia is English. It's like I can go to everywhere else in Southeast Asia and speak English, which might not be the case if you're in Latin America, which I just came back from, right? So it's English also becomes our main
lingua franca.
Lingua franca in that case, which is always a bit strange. But I think it's something to be very sensitive about. I mean, for me, a lot of time it comes out of the casting that I take on also.
Right.
Depending on what my cast is most comfortable in. I made a film that was purely spoken in English because although my actors are Chinese like myself, but they cannot speak Chinese. So the whole film was in English, which actually could be quite surprising to a foreign audience.
Right, but just out of curiosity, and maybe it helps to picture it for me as an audience, do you actually rewrite or translate in these respective languages?
Actually,
In your script,
I think constantly, yeah. Especially when the cast is on board. You know, you have an imagined cast type of casting, and then finally when the cast is here, for example, in Imagine, even the Chinese is very different, right? I wrote it for a certain part of person from, for a person from a certain part of China,
Right.
and then he and she came from a different part of China, and the way they spoke their Chinese was totally different.
Right.
And so then I started rewriting, but with them, because I don't have the 32 different Chineses, you know, in my mind, right?
Yeah.
So I work very closely with my actors to rewrite the way they would say certain things.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting how you bring in the orality of the language into, you know, the storytelling. Maybe not necessarily always in the script, but into the storytelling of your film. What about you, Edwin? How do you experience like treating language for your film?
Language in
And you're adapting from, let's say, with Vengeance from a writer, from a book.
Yeah. Well, in this particular film, it's as I said before, it's the form itself is not coming from a real everyday life style of language, the Indonesian language. It is borrowed by the popular style in cinema in the 80s, 90s. So it's also foreign language actually, although it's Indonesian, but it feels like distance. I think that's what in this film. I think it's quite. I'm quite aware that I want to to discuss that how the Indonesian language also do violence into our everyday life, because we are pushed to a situation where we have to use this strange language, which is called Indonesian national language, because we are coming from different kind of culture, and we have our own languages, and all of us know that almost I guess I don't know how many are already forgotten and disappeared, and it was not really discussed in our consciousness about how we taking for granted we just use this national language, and we don't really, if we go to, for example, eastern part of Indonesia, then we cannot really understand each other using because the national language is too simple. It was designed to to make trade for the trade purposes, so it's very practical. So that's the thing. I think it's also because my understanding of how I watch film, because I was I grew up with Hollywood films. I'm not educated in English school. My English is very exposure also not good. I only learned Indonesian language, so all language is always barrier for me. So I just when I watch film, even when I was in film school, there's always distance when I read the subtitle, because I don't really understand the English really well, and it must be also translation a little bit from the original language, for example, from Thai to English. So I don't really believe in the language in cinema. So I have to put my more effort on the the sound and the image. So I treat language as a just another object, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I don't really, put everything in the dialogue, I would say,
Yeah, that's also a very interesting point, like how much our storytelling or whether our storytelling depends very heavily on spoken words or dialogue or not, and instead appeal to, you know, the sound and vision elements of the film. Sorry, let me quickly check, like how much time do we still have? Sorry?
15 minutes.
15 minutes? Okay, so time for more questions. Yes, this is, I'm taking a question from Joe. I hope you're still there, Joe. Hope you didn't wait too long for your question to be answered. What upcoming films are you most excited about from your respective countries? And is there a film movement that you can see coming? Chris, you want to start
I have
first?
to think.
Okay, you're thinking first.
Yeah.
Edwin, do you have anything that you're excited about from Indonesia?
Oh yeah, of course. Right now there's a lot of film coming, especially this month, next month. I'm excited to see the reaction. I saw Uni by Kamila Andini. It's a good film. I'm in competition also in this festival. I'm very curious how the people will react on it, and then also Regas film Photocopier who's also coming soon. And then next year I'm looking forward to Makbul Mubarak film, first feature film that have a great anticipation. A lot of short films coming, so it's really optimistic, I guess, for the Indonesian film.
Do you want to say something about whether or not there is a movement coming up? Maybe, I mean, if I understand this, then, you know, maybe referring to something like Leopard or this kind of, you know, new wavy.
I don't know. It's really up to us to call it a movement or not. To think, but it's something hopeful to look forward. Yeah.
Okay, so you see a lot of like movements and let's say innovations, yeah? So Chris, tell us about Singapore.
Yeah. So Singapore's film output is very little. Meanwhile, I was away for a whole year, so I have to really think what are the new films coming out, because I think a lot of our films pretty much got put on pause during the COVID period, and so it is not even so much films that are out right now from my memory, but the films that are in the works, I think, that I can think of that I'm pretty excited about. Zhao Ziwei is shooting his film actually right in this moment, and also Nicole Midori. I'm trying to bring up the name of these films, but I think the names have changed, and so I cannot remember what is the latest name of Nicole's film. Yeah, but Nicole, my fellow Young Artist Award winner, her film she's shooting right now also, and Shu Ming also. I think her Shu Ming's that film is called Ajuma. I think So it's an exciting year for I think all three of them that I mentioned are first-time filmmakers.
Okay.
So
and all are feature length.
all are feature length, which I'm looking forward to. Coming up, I guess next year if they're shooting. No, some of them are shooting next year, so it also could be either late next year or the year after. I mean, similarly, I think it's a bit hard for us. It's hard for the creators ourselves to say, there is a movement, you know. I think it's more so for people, it's not up to us to say that there is a movement. It's really for the people who are writing and commenting on it to take a step back to say, here, these guys.
There is a category.
Yeah, they look like they're doing something.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But maybe also to say that Southeast Asia, as you had put it, has become a lot more on the map in terms of the representation of Southeast Asian films in festivals these days. Is a lot more significant. Previously we were talking about like, ooh, there's one Southeast Asian film.
Yeah.
Like, let's all rush to watch this film.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think now it's like a proper, proportionate amount of films, and I mean, still very much lesser than most other regions. But already we are seeing so much more Southeast Asian films in the last 5 to 10 years that are really, getting the attention, not just in a tokenistic way, but really getting the attention from an international audience. And maybe we can then say that there is something moving. I don't know if it's a movement, but there's something moving with Southeast Asian cinema from a maybe a more international perspective. I think after having traveled with my own film for the last few years, I feel that very strong sense. And it's nice for me when I'm traveling for someone else to come and talk to me, to associate it with also another Southeast Asian film.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, did you see this film? Oh, it was coming out together with your film. And they're making certain connections, and I'm saying, oh, okay. So in your head, the audience, you are connecting, you are making certain of these connections. And for me, it's very interesting to see it from that point of view.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and I think it's also worth mentioning that in the meantime, how people make films and even see films shift from a very domestic, national perspective. Like there were ones like Indonesian films, Singaporean films, Malaysian films, Thai films, and slowly evolved into, it's Indonesian Singaporean film or Thai Singaporean film and so on and so forth. So I do think that beyond this term that was attached to us from the outside, Southeast Asia, now there is a certain appropriation. Like we start giving it our own meaning in different ways. Okay, so let's move into something a little bit more towards the filmmaking itself. I will start with Edwin. It's a question from Chris. Are you still there, Chris? Hi. Yes. How is it like, Edwin, to shoot Vengeance in brackets? Was it Super 16? And to Chris, would you try the format someday? Keyword slicer. So Edwin, can you tell us how it was like to shoot on?
Yeah, it was 16mm, Super 16. Yeah, it's really nice. Well, I always loved the format since the beginning. I think it's not the first time that when I exposed to this thing called the camera and the celluloid when I was in the school, it feels so magical. It feels like this is coming from, it's so spatial. And then suddenly the technology changed into the digital, and I miss that kind of sensation of making film. And so I hope it's not too romantic, to sound romantic, but it is so romantic. I mean, it is really nice to shoot film with it. And then, I can see different feeling, different image. It's just totally different. And yeah, I hope I can continue.
You want to continue?
It's challenging. It is challenging. There's no lab in Jakarta. It's already gone. So we have to do it back and forth, Jakarta and Tokyo, Osaka. But when we premiere the film in Jakarta to our friends, the filmmakers, they are all trying. Yeah, that's an option. I think I was lucky to meet the producer that who also believe that the medium itself is as important as as the whole process of the filmmaking. I mean, it's like painters. You are using you can draw same glass with but it's gonna be different feeling when you draw it with pencils or watercolor or whatever. So I hope the medium itself also brings something to the for the audience to experience the film in the cinema. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly felt that it's very visible, right? This texture of the 16mm film. What about you, Chris? Do you use the same medium?
Well, I also want to say that when watching a film, that celluloid feel brought me back to the period of the film, which was really nice in a very bodily way. It's not just like, oh, I give you some props to tell you that that's the period, but immediately once I'm watching it from that celluloid level, I was already transported, in that way. So that was for me very powerful already, with the choice of film that you used. And 16mm is it's very beautiful. I was using the 16mm film when I was in school. At that point in time, my training was actually a cinematographer, as a camera person. So I was literally having my hands in the black bag, trying to feel
right.
like, oh
Yeah.
shit, did I make a mistake? Oops. Yeah. Which is like a very amazing feeling. But with Singapore's situation, we don't have any processing labs. And yesterday we were discussing how now we almost don't have a projectionist anymore. So yeah, there's a few more steps of difficulty in doing film in Singapore. We would then need to bring the film somewhere else to process. And recently, from what I hear, you cannot, because of the X-ray process, you have to go with the film. You cannot even just send the film. So yeah, the obstacles to using film to use in Singapore, it's a bit more difficult. But that's not to say that people are not doing it. Actually, I forgot to mention two other films that will be coming out really soon by two of my very close filmmaker friends who actually shoot on film, Daniel Hui and Liao Jiekai. Yeah. So they have made films with film before. In fact, Daniel always uses the film, celluloid film to make film. Yeah, he doesn't really shoot video. I don't remember him to do so. Yeah. And yeah, so there are people who are still doing it, and there's a reason why they're still doing it. And it's not just romantic. As Edwin has said, like the process changes the work. The whole exercise of the muscle and the practice and the economy of the shots, and yeah, all of that challenges the film in a very, very different way. If we are not just to see film as final product, I think. Yeah. So yes, will I try it? I might. I was in Argentina, and actually I was shooting a film there, and I was discussing with the DOP to use film because they have the facilities there to use film. At the end, that didn't work out because we already were putting in so much money to do COVID restriction stuff. So at the end, we decided, okay, we have to do this film thing another day. Let's go back to using video, which is cheaper for us. But there was that consideration when I was earlier this year shooting the film in Argentina. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree that it is, just like the language that we prefer to speak, I guess this is also a very big influence, on a filmmaker, how you decide on which medium you make your film, and it's sometimes not just an aesthetical choice, it's also a very practical, economical choice as well.
I'm going to say it's not always better. Huh? I mean,
No.
it's not always better that film just is better. No. Again, it's like how the funding question is.
Yeah, and also
very
different
specific.
stories require,
Yeah.
I guess, different treatment.
Different people, different stories. Yeah, I think you just need to feel for it, like why to do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I think we are allowed like one last question. Okay. So I will conclude with a question that is a little bit broader than what's being asked here. It's a question to both of you. Like, are your films, or how are your films influenced by Asian cinemas? Brief answers, please. So let's start with you, Edwin.
I got more exposure on the Asian cinema because at the end of the day, I understand that the film that we made meant to communicate with other film as well. Like Chris said before, if it's connected with the other film, that would be it's a beneficial for everybody to get more understanding, to get more learning experience from this film, and then communicate to other films. And there's a lot of mysteries, there's a lot of questions that needs to be addressed and answered, and or at least we have to evaluate within the context of Asian identity and problems and historical facts that are, especially in my case in Indonesia, always in between fact and mystery, and sometimes it's too surreal to just understand the past. So I need to, as a filmmaker, I need to learn from other film in the Asian region, especially in this closer region. I understand that we were used to the same, it's a one thing. So it's supposed to be I can learn something from other region films.
Any filmmakers that you want to mention in particular?
Chris?
Yeah. No, certainly. I mean, we both really enjoyed first films, right?
Yes.
So we were like, wow.
We use the same machine.
Yeah.
A lot of rocks.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris? What kind of Asian cinema inspires you? Or influence?
Since a long time ago already, I guess my influence has been Asian cinema, because yes, although we were growing up watching Hollywood films, and then in film school you are taught European master films, and then you come out to try making some of these films like this, and you will fail.
Right.
I have experienced this by failing a lot, and then realizing actually, it doesn't work. So these influences I have from that part of the world, if I just try to use them directly like this, it doesn't translate. So I think since a long time back already, I can say that Stephen Chow has a lot more influence on me than Fellini, So in terms of Asian cinema, a lot of it is also what I grew up with. I mean, the Wuxia films of Hong Kong cinema, the Triad films of Hong Kong cinema, and then also the new wave guys from Taiwan cinema. I mean, these people have a very, very strong influence on my cinema, And that's when I realized, no matter how I try to make a film, it aligns a lot more this side than somewhere else. But I don't know. I mean, it's just something in your muscle.
Yeah. So it's also something that you sometimes cannot really pinpoint or address, but it's there.
It is. And now, even more excitingly, even closer, which is the Southeast Asian side of. I think I'm just going to say this random thought, but I think we experience the invisible in a very different way than European cinema, than Western cinema. And this thing I feel very strongly with Southeast Asian films. What is the invisible in cinema? And I think that for me is always what we're looking for in at least I am in films, you know, whether the spiritual or the metaphysical or, you know, what is not spoken, that relationship with the invisible, with the non-assumption of it, the taking it for granted on certain ways as being already part of our lives, that invisible level of reality is really something that I feel very close to with South Asian cinema, and
I do feel that maybe it's also a commonality between both of you, that I see that you don't place this, spiritual, metaphysical things as the other, like visually, and instead kind of blend them into the visual treatment that you're doing, which is quite close to a natural vision, I would say. But probably, this is a topic for a longer conversation next time. I thank all of you very, very much for your question. It has been a very interesting conversation. I even learned a lot of new things about Edwin, despite being friends for already quite a long time. And definitely Chris. And so I'm sorry that we cannot address all the questions today, but probably we have, some other chances to make this conversation continue through the festival. And I thank you very, very much also for the chance of having this conversation. And I hope you enjoyed it. And enjoy the festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Edwin.